Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to another movie review. So, The Flash, got to see it a week earlier. Over here, they did this early screening thing at just a few locations, and only like like there was a limit about like 100 people. Some locations, some there were 140. So, my location were 100 people, and I was number 31 out of 100 in my location. So, I went to see it. And this is like the last two movies of the DCEU. This one and Aquaman. I'm not really sure about Blue Beetle and where that one stands for now, so just gotta wait and see. So yeah, I can already see the reviews that these two movies are about to get for obvious reasons, and because I already see it now before the movie comes out, so I don't even have to say what kind of reviews can you expect when it comes out, right? So yeah, it kind of sucks that these are the two movies that are gonna end the DCEU, and people are just gonna drop a bunch of fake reviews for certain reasons. But I'm not that type. I don't care because it literally has nothing to do with the movie itself. So I'm not just gonna rattle some fake shit to make the movie look bad. So, like, these last two movies before we move on to James Gunn's DCU. And yeah, honestly, not really having a lot of high hopes because the fact that James Gunn is in charge of all of it. But yeah, we gotta wait and see how that whole thing goes. So yeah, man, The Flash. For what it's worth, I would say it was actually a good movie. And yeah, you can't really expect a lot of cameos throughout this movie because that's what always people do when a movie involves like time travel or different timeline, different multiverse and stuff. Same like they did for No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness. So if you're that kind of guy going into this movie just for that reason, then don't, because this was a very Barry Allen centric story. I mean, they were cameos of some Superman. Like there was one Superman. I mean, we've already seen this version of Superman before and Supergirl, but there was one version of Superman that I did not expect to see at all. It got a huge pop in my theaters. I'm like, I mean, I know this actor was supposed to play Superman at one point and it didn't happen, but man, I did not expect him to see in this movie. And I'm pretty sure they DH'd him for it. Like he looks like young, so yeah, it's and also there were the old Batman, the one even before Michael Keaton's Batman. That Batman appeared for a while. They kind of showed this different perspective of like different universes. That whole scene was actually amazing. So yeah, anyways, so this whole story was actually focusing more on Barry himself. Like the main story was that he got to learn that there are some things that you can't change. It just that's how it's supposed to go. No matter how much you try to change it, you always end up at the same. Or you could just do something catastrophic. So you just have to accept it of how certain things go. So that was the whole plot point of it, and this whole movie was just Barry trying to learn it, and we also kind of see what are the consequences if he goes down a different route where he does not want to give up, he still keeps on trying to change it. He kind of saw, yeah, that whole scene was actually pretty good too. And yeah, Michael Keaton's Batman, for he was here for a while, so that was actually a whole great scene. And also I forgot the actress's name that they cast as Supergirl. So even though even though she dresses like Laura Lane Kent, the hair, the outfit, everything, but she's still Kara. They kind of switched together, kind of mixed together both of those characters and made her into this character. And yeah, I would say she was actually a pretty good character too. And some of her scenes were like especially there were scenes where she was throwing punches and kicks, and which it kind of looks a bit off. Like I'm not really sure what's the exact word to use for those parts, but I mean her flying scenes and everything was amazing. But there was some parts kind of looks a bit off. So the main point of these two being in the movie is one of the reasons for Barry himself to learn that you can't really change certain things no matter how much you try. You're just gonna go back to the exact same point, like it's just supposed to happen. No matter how much you try, the same thing is gonna happen over and over again. So them two being in the movie it was just one of the stuff that was supposed to teach Barry this, all right? Not just our present time Barry and also the Barry in that timeline that he messed up. So these both Barrys, like that was the whole point of having Michael Keaton's Batman and Supergirl being in this movie was for this two Barry to realize that exactly, and they also meet the Barry that didn't want to give up, and that whole scene was actually pretty cool. Like when I realized that that was actually Barry, because I was trying to keep my mind open and think that this could be a different character altogether, because comic book accuracy don't mean shit anymore. So I was just keeping my mind open to, maybe this could be a different character altogether. But no, that was, after a certain point, I was like, yep, that was him. So that was like the consequence of Barry not wanting to listen, and he wanted to try and change things anyway. So they kind of saw what happened. So yeah, that whole scene was actually pretty good. Um, yeah, man, for the most part, all the CGI stuff was amazing, and also, Ben Affleck's Batman was in this movie for a while. He had a great scenes, putting on the blue, cowl and cape and everything. His whole scenes was actually pretty good, but he was only in the movie in like the beginning, and him and Wonder Woman appeared for like a few seconds. So, yeah, that whole scene was actually pretty good. So I think this is the last time we're gonna see Ben Affleck's Batman. So for what it's worth, just enjoy it, guys. Because I'm not really sure if he's gonna be an Aquaman. Like if he is gonna be an Aquaman, then great. That would be the last time we see him. But yeah, but he had some dope scenes in this movie too. So yeah, that's pretty much that's pretty much the great parts of this movie. Now let's move on to some stuff which for me didn't really make a lot of sense. Right. So this is mostly involving the time travel stuff. So it didn't what like it just did not does not make sense, a lot of stuff, like how, because sometimes he travels back in time to a certain point, and he will meet his his self from that timeline, right? And there was some scenes where the two Barrys, they will travel back in time, but then they won't meet their older self in that time. You get what I mean? Or did they just merge with? Oh yeah, I think, you know what? I think that was just me. I'm pretty sure they merged with themselves from that timeline. I think that's what it was. But then why did he do it earlier though? Yeah, I think maybe it isn't me. I think this is, yeah, because I was thinking it was just me, but then he could have done it earlier too to make sure there was no two Barrys. Like, in the Flash series, right, when Barry changed the timeline, and then he came back to the timeline that he has changed, and then he kind of there was only one Barry, right? There were no two Barrys, like one him and one from that timeline that he changed. There was only one, which is him. And then it was kind of different where there was an episode where he went in time, and then there were another version of himself there too. Yeah, yeah, that whole thing kind of seemed off. Like I'm not really sure how to explain it without actually spoiling stuff, because like I'm kind of confused myself how to properly explain it. Like that whole stuff kind of didn't make sense to me. On like how come in certain scenes when he traveled back in time, there's a future, there's like his self from that timeline there, and at some points like they're not there. And if he can actually merge with their own like uh, his own self from that timeline. Why didn't he do it before? And then it kind of leads up to having two other Barrys. So yeah, that. Oh, maybe it's because he didn't get his powers back. I don't know. It's pretty confusing to think about. So I don't know. I'm just gonna. I mean, this is a Flash thing. I mean, even in the Flash series, this happened. So yeah, I'm not really sure why I'm questioning it now when I watched it in the Flash show and it was completely fine. So yeah, another thing that doesn't make sense is how come the timeline could change to that extent when Barry, like, so yeah, the Reverse Flash or Professor Zoom didn't actually kill Barry's mom in this movie. It's just some guy. They don't actually show it to you, and making rather than Barry wanting to stop his mother's death, they actually changed it up. They actually wanted Barry's dad to stay at home so that his mom doesn't get killed. You know? Because when his mom was killed, he was in the house, but he was upstairs, but his dad was not at home. He went to the supermarket, and then he wanted to change it where his mom got all the stuff that she needed from the supermarket so that his dad won't go out of the house. So his dad would be at home when the stuff happened, so her mom won't die, right? So how does keeping his dad at home change literally everything? You get what I mean? So, like, I'm not really sure the Michael Keaton in this movie was the same Michael Keaton from the previous Batman movies, or this is just another Batman altogether. I'm just not really sure how come that changing that one thing could actually like change like literally so much, because you see in the Flash series, like he changed the timeline. He went back to his present day in a new timeline, and I mean, yeah, it was kind of catastrophical, but still, a lot of the things remain the same. But in this movie, it literally changed so much. So it just don't really make sense how keeping his dad at home would actually change that much. You know what I mean? So yeah, I kind of just went with it. But the more I think about this stuff, the more it kind of not makes sense to me. So like, yeah, and also this movie kind of revolves around the damn can of tomatoes. That can of tomatoes defined the whole movie. So, to put more context to it, the reason why his dad went out to the supermarket was to get a can of tomatoes, but his mom forgot. And during that time, somebody came to the house and killed the mom. So, what Barry did was go back in time where his mom was still in the supermarket and put a can of tomatoes in her trolley. And then he went, he just speed forwards himself back. So that was the thing that changed it. So, now that she has the can of tomatoes, her dad won't have to go out. So dad will still be at home to prevent his mom getting killed. So that was the thing that changed everything. And Michael Keaton was now the Batman, and he's all retired. And then now Supergirl is Super instead of Clark Kent, and we actually learned the fate of Clark Kent in that timeline too. So yeah, it just didn't make sense. It looked like he was in a whole different Earth, but it's supposed to be just a different timeline. Like I know a lot of people nowadays they don't really know the difference between timeline and different Earths, because different Earths is different universe, and then different timeline is like still within the same Earth, but just a different timeline. Like most people don't really understand the difference. But in this movie, it just seems like it's supposed to be different timelines, but they made it look like it's a different Earth altogether. So a lot of the timeline stuff didn't really make sense. I mean, like if you don't really give a lot of thoughts to the timeline, time travel related stuff, you would actually think this movie was a great movie. But the more that I think about all the time travel stuff, it just kind of bugs me a little bit because everything else that did not involve the time travel stuff was great. Like I was like, yeah, this is actually a really great movie. But the more I keep thinking about all the time travel stuff, it just like, like it just don't really hit well with me. Like, how could some stuff, like, like how could some times when he traveled back, there's his old self there. Sometimes there's not, and yeah, it just don't make sense to me. And also, after he learned that he's not supposed to do all this, and then he goes back to his timeline, and then he sees his older self putting that can of tomatoes in his mom's trolley. I thought they were gonna do the same thing in the Flash show where his present self tells his older self not to do it, but actually no. His older self just puts the thing and then just runs away. So I was like, okay. Because that's because that Barry wanted to speak to his mom, but not telling the mom that he was Barry, and then he, took away the can of tomatoes from the trolley, and then he kind of places it on a different location so that his father, like they could use the CCTV footage to free his dad. So yeah, that was also the thing that changed the timeline altogether again. Because everything else stayed the same, but then there's gonna be the new Batman now. Because at the end, there was a new Batman, and Barry was like, "What the hell is this?" So yeah, in fact, he did change the timeline. So this movie revolves around two things. One, having Barry learn that you can't really change anything. There are some things that are just supposed to stay a certain way, no matter how much you change it. It's always gonna go back to that. And number two, a can of tomatoes. That was the main two things of this movie that changed a lot. Yeah, that was the two things. I mean, I don't know, but I guess it worked out. But yeah, if you don't think too much about the time travel stuff as like I did, then yes, you would think this is actually a great movie. Because I actually think this is actually a pretty good movie, man. I would say if Spider-Verse was not released this year or it was not released yet, I would think this is by far the best superhero movie of this year. But Across the Spider-Verse exists, so I'm like, yeah, nope. But for the most part, this was actually a pretty good movie, man. Just the timeline thing, because sometimes I like to think too much about these stuff, like to make it make sense. Most people don't care, so but I do. I didn't want to think much about it, but yeah, you can skip all those parts if you don't want to, but yeah. But hey, man, that was actually a good movie. I enjoyed it. So yeah, you heard first here. Yeah, it's a good movie before you hear all the fake reviews that people are gonna put out there because of what the actor did. So yeah. Anyways, that's all y'all for my review for The Flash. So yeah, this was a great movie. So I'm lucky to have seen it, a week before. Tomorrow I'm watching Transformers. So this is a huge week. Like within a week, I saw Transformers, Across the Spider Verse, and The Flash. I hope Transformers is gonna be a good movie, and then I can say like I watched three great movies in one week. So yeah, this is gonna be a whole great week. So yeah, that is all for this review. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to the channel for more movie reviews and give this video a like. And yeah, I will see you tomorrow for the Transformers review. So until then, everyone, take care. Goodbye. Thank you for watching.